are the shocking visuals of high-voltage drama that transpired after the arrest of former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan. What happened after was absolute pandemonium, with anarchy well on its way in Pakistan. We'll tell you more about that later. Hello there, you are watching Inside South Asia with me, Dasani Atada. Here's a look at what's coming up. Our top story this week is from Pakistan. The arrest of Imran Khan, ostensibly for corruption, has sent the country's political, law and order and security to new dimensions.
Drama outside the Islamabad High Court. Imran Khan, Pakistan's former Prime Minister, unceremoniously huddled away by paramilitary Pakistan Rangers. Minutes later, anarchy took over. Through Tuesday night and into Wednesday, most of Pakistan burned. Gruesome arson to scenes of police brutality to free-for-all loot.
They've got these bullet shells as well. That's what they're showing. They show these bullet shells. They say that these are rubber bullet shells that have been used, and canisters, gas canisters that have been used. They're using these cloths. You can probably see here intermittent gun firing in the backdrop as well.
Prohibitory orders imposed, internet shut down. The army called out in several provinces as the situation got out of hand. Even extending to the bizarre, like this one, peacocks being stolen from the house of the corps commander. Or chicken korma, a gourmet dish, being carried off. Net-net, a wave of frenzied turmoil across an already battered and bruised nation.
This is the first time that we are seeing that the women are participating in these protests. And right now, of course, we can call it a high-voltage drama going on in Pakistan. Of course, the only reason behind it is that the PDM-led government, they have time and again said that they don't want to go towards the election because they know that if they go towards the elections, as previously PTI government has time and again proved that they have the ground support, they have the political support throughout Pakistan, and they have been winning all of the by-elections. And that is why the current PDM government, it is scared of elections and they don't want elections, and they have created this drama just to avoid the elections.
An unmissable theme to the protests: target the army. The Pakistan Army headquarters in Rawalpindi and the Corps Commander's residence in Lahore were focal points for rampagers of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. There's also the timing. Khan was arrested a day after the army lashed out on allegations he'd made of conspiracy. And there's everything to say the present rampage may be the last straw. A release by the Inter-Services Public Relations ISPR said the army showed extreme patience, tolerance and restraint without caring about its own reputation. Any further attack on the army, including law enforcement agencies, military and state installations and properties, will be severely retaliated against. It wasn't over yet, and as if rounding off this episode of the saga, Pakistan's Supreme Court, with Imran's own man at the top, decided it wanted the last word. Imran Khan's arrest was declared illegal and immediate release ordered.
Justice Umar Atta Banyal making this case as a case study, has said that this should be treated as a classical case, that nobody, and I repeat, nobody should be arrested from a premises of the court, of any court, and that in the premises of the court, nobody except the police, not even the rangers, not even the army, no force will be allowed. That is what the Supreme Court has made it clear.
But the question stands, Imran's war with the Pakistan government and Pakistan army has entered a new dimension. The gloves are off now.
Our next story is also from Pakistan. Recently, the country hosted top diplomats from neighboring China as well as Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. Taliban-ruled Afghanistan's Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi, who faces travel sanctions from the United Nations, was also present. Take a look.
It's the fifth trilateral meeting between Pakistan, China and Afghanistan, the first with the Taliban on board. Amir Khan Muttaqi, Taliban's acting foreign minister and a man who has a travel ban imposed by the UNSC, visiting Islamabad on a waiver. The Pakistan Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the Chinese Foreign Minister Xing Gang and Muttaqi discussed ways to improve regional connectivity, trade, counter-terrorism and ways to revive the impoverished Afghan economy. Pakistan and China agreed that the only way forward for Afghanistan was the lifting of quote-unquote unilateral sanctions against it by several Western nations. The visit came the same week in which the UN hosted a conference on Afghanistan in Doha, but without the Taliban, where the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the Taliban's suppression of women's rights and was categorical that the Taliban would not be recognized as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. But it seems both China and Pakistan have set aside Taliban's track record on women's rights abuses, as the joint statement took note of the Taliban's assurances on women's rights. The reasons for Pakistan and China engaging actively with the Taliban are both strategic and economic. Pakistan shares a 2,600-kilometer border with Afghanistan. Its provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and the southern province of Balochistan have both seen an uptick in violence. Just last week, 6 Pakistani soldiers were killed in a gun battle with the Pakistani Taliban or the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan fighters in the northwestern region. The TTP has close links to the Afghan Taliban. Similarly, the foremost Chinese concern in Afghanistan is minimizing the threat posed by the Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement, or the ETIM. The ETIM is an Al-Qaeda-affiliated armed group that has conducted attacks on China in its pursuit of the creation of East Turkestan on Chinese territory. It's no surprise then that the joint statement stressed the need for not allowing any individual, group or party, including the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement, to use their territories to harm and threaten regional security and interests or conduct terrorist actions and activities. Xing Gang said before the trilateral meeting that China and Pakistan were ready to support the Afghan reconstruction actively, but the Taliban needed to deliver on their commitments. Since the withdrawal of the United States forces from Kabul in August 2021, Afghanistan has suffered a severe economic and humanitarian crisis and has also plunged into international isolation. While Western nations have suspended their economic cooperation with Kabul, Beijing, Moscow, Islamabad have increased their engagement. China recently secured a 25-year contract to extract oil from the Afghan Amu Darya basin and is actively negotiating other investments with the Taliban. They also agreed to extend the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a part of the Belt and Road Initiative, into Afghanistan, as well as strengthening cooperation in agriculture, trade, energy, capacity building, as well as build on existing projects including the Kasa 1000, the TAPI, Trans-Afghan Railway Network. In his address to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Goa, Bhutto even urged the international community to meaningfully engage with the interim Afghan government. It's evident that engaging with the Taliban government in Afghanistan is a political and economic necessity both for China and Pakistan.
All's not well with the Bangladesh economy. The country's inflation soars with growth rates and forex reserves in a tailspin. The country's economic experts say that strong measures are needed to prevent Bangladesh from going Sri Lanka and Pakistan's way. Here's the story.
It was touted as a success story like few others, from what US diplomats once called a basket case to what the World Bank called an inspiring growth story. Its garment factories helped pull millions out of poverty. Just months ago, Bangladesh was grabbing headlines as an economic miracle. Then, a sudden turnaround. Now, worrying numbers stare. Forex reserves are down to $29.86 billion, the lowest in 7 years. Exports have fallen 16.5% over the last year to $3.95 billion in April as orders from clothing retailers slowed. Inward remittances, a huge support for the country's balance of payments, are down 16% year-on-year. Dips in GDP growth and per capita income in 2 successive quarters suggest onset of recession. The IMF has released $476 million as the first loan installment.
Our inflation is high compared to our trading partners of the other countries. Tax to GDP ratio has been falling. We have been warning the government that your fiscal space is coming down. You will not be able to meet the political demand for higher expenditure on social sector like health, education, or social safety net programs, or infrastructure development.
As with the revival a decade or so back, the nosedive also originates here. The ready-made garment industry, the second largest in the world, accounts for 80% of exports. And the primary culprit is declining international and domestic orders. COVID-19 had hit hard, dozens of factories were shut, 1 million people lost jobs. Factory activity showed signs of returning after the pandemic eased, but as global inflation peaked, orders plummeted by a whopping 30%. Is the growth story over? A ripple effect has followed. Public anger has erupted. With less money to import fuel came spiking prices. Diaspora remittances, another economy mainstay, slowed, and an energy crisis with rolling blackouts became a reality.
Stop selling dollar in the market. Protect the dollar, preserve the dollar reserve level. Let the exchange rate be primarily determined by the market forces. You can do little bit of intervention to smooth out fluctuations, but don't tamper with the direction.
Economists have talked of Bangladesh going the Sri Lanka-Pakistan way, stressing though that the situation is not irreversible. Big fiscal tightening measures take priority to control the slide. Proper use of IMF aid will be critical, besides a close eye on China deploying the same debt trap as it has done in the past in South Asia.
Sri Lanka is all set to decriminalize homosexuality, while Nepal has been stunned by a Bhutanese refugee scam. Here's a look at some of the other stories that made headlines in the region this week.
Relief for the LGBTQ+ community in Sri Lanka. The country's apex court has given the green light to a bill seeking to decriminalize homosexuality. Campaigners have hailed the move as a historic development. After hearing more than a dozen petitions on both sides of the argument, the Supreme Court ruled that the bill was not unconstitutional. This clears the way for a parliamentary debate and vote on the subject. Activists in Sri Lanka have been campaigning for years to change the law in the island nation, where being gay is still punishable by the law. Though cleared by the Supreme Court, activists will still have to lobby for support from the 225 parliamentarians to push the proposed legislation through the parliament.
Nepal's politics has been jolted and the country's former Home Minister Balkrishna Khand arrested in connection with a fake Bhutanese refugee scam. The scam reportedly involves multiple former high-ranking officials from Nepal's Home Ministry. The allegation is that top officials worked hand-in-hand with scammers, making fake promises and forging documents. Around 100,000 Bhutanese refugees have been pushed into Western countries since the 1990s.
Another first for India's mega blockbuster film Pathan. The Shah Rukh Khan starro is set to become the first Hindi film ever to release in Bangladesh since it was formed in 1971. Hindi language Bollywood films have not been released in Bangladesh in 5 decades in a bid to promote the local film industry. The ban was briefly lifted back in 2009 to allow Wanted, starring Salman Khan, to open in the territory. However, the film was pulled out 1 week after its release because of massive protests by movie organizations. In February this year, a consortium of 19 Bangladeshi film associations decided to allow Hindi language films to release in the country and suggested that 10 films release a year.
Another embarrassment for Pakistan. The Asian Cricket Council has reportedly decided to move the upcoming Asia Cup out of the country to Sri Lanka. The decision to shift the event from the original host country has been on the cards from the moment BCCI Secretary Jay Shah said that the Indian team would not travel across the border. Pakistan has objected to this decision, saying the tournament should be organized in the UAE. The Asia Cup is scheduled for the month of September. Another cheetah has died at India's Madhya Pradesh's Kuno National Park, hours after it was found injured by a monitoring team. Daksha is the third cheetah to die at the park in around 40 days. According to officials, Daksha was released in enclosure number 1 and 2 male cheetahs, Vayu and Agni, were released from another enclosure for mating. But it appears that the male cheetahs turned violent during the process. 20 cheetahs have been introduced at the national park under Project Cheetah, the first transcontinental relocation project in Asia.
Up next, we take you on a ride to Afghanistan. Despite uncertainty and chaos, the country's love affair for the Toyota Corolla still runs deep. Be it citizens or the Taliban, the Toyota is very much a common theme.
The 15th of August 2021. Taliban flocked the streets of Kabul as the group seized power again in Afghanistan. But there's another image attached to this date. Along with the Taliban, their favorite mode of transport also made its return. Armies invade and retreat.
It's time for American troops to come home.
Governments rise and fall. But this is one vehicle that remains constant: the Toyota pickup truck. The sturdy vehicle made by the Japanese automaker became a curiously iconic symbol of Taliban force in the 1990s. The Toyota tag goes beyond the signature Taliban SUV. Today, the Toyota Corolla has become a household name here. So, why did this car become an instant hit in the war-torn country?
The Toyota Corolla is popular in Afghanistan because the spare parts are more readily available compared to other cars like the Benz, BMWs and some of the other brands of cars.
The Toyota Corolla, all the spare parts and the car itself and everything is very strong. Afghanistan has a lot of mountains and deserts, and all other cars except for the Toyota Corolla have failed to show good results.
Sturdy, uncomplicated and affordable. In a nation where roads dissolve into punishing terrain, repairs rely on frayed supply chains, and a make-do mentality is universal, this is the ideal vehicle.
They are good cars. Other cars are flimsy like paper. The Corollas are solid. The Japanese cars are especially good. The Corolla is quick, their metal is bold, and they work well.
The Toyota Corolla is said to be the world's most popular car, with over 50 million units trundling off production lines since 1966. Corollas flooded Afghanistan after the withdrawal of Soviet forces in 1989 and the subsequent collapse of the USSR. They've had a background role in national history ever since. They're a replacement for Moscow's state-owned Lada brand. A decade later, when Washington launched airstrikes after the 9/11 attacks, Taliban founder Mullah Omar fled his Kandahar hideaway in a white Corolla. It was buried in 2001, but the getaway car was triumphantly excavated last year. Over 20 years of the Taliban insurgency, the Corolla became the vehicle of choice for car bombers too. Earlier this year, Taliban authorities boasted about a new Afghan-designed sports car, a supposed symbol of progress. But under its sleek aerodynamic exterior were the mechanical innards of a modest Corolla.
Well, the
thing is that in other countries, everything is done in standard ways. But in Afghanistan, people don't care much about standards.
The Afghan-Toyota bond certainly does come across as enduring. The Taliban vehicle of authority and terror and war and luxury and more.
It has been 25 years since India became fully self-reliant in the nuclear program space. What exactly happened between the 11th to the 13th of May? Take a look as I take your leave. For the WION team, I'm Dasuni Atada. See you next week.
Today, at 15:45 hours, India conducted 3 underground nuclear tests in the Pokhran-II.